Big companies like Facebook, Google, Apple, Amazon are dominating, becoming a kind of superpower, accumulating information, money. What is the role of states in the future? Are Google or Facebook the new states? So what do you think, what is the relation between states, nations and these big four companies?
Well, I think it's very difficult to draw just some kind of purely abstract theoretical conclusion about states versus companies, because much depends on what states are we talking about. Part of my overall argument has been that the American government and the Chinese government have been very strategic in presenting the information industry and the data industry as the sort of vanguard of the transformation of their own economy and the transformation of their also geopolitical power. So there, I would argue, despite all of the rhetoric we hear about digital entrepreneurialism and so forth, it has been the state that has been the key driver of the emergence of that industry. So the relationship between the state and the data industry in the US and China is deeply strategic and intertwined.
Okay.
In Europe, the situation is very different, where the states, to some extent, and the governments have been more or less quite passive in this field. They have wanted the technology industry to somehow emerge and develop on its own. They have not really taken strategic steps in saving many of the European companies like Nokia, when Nokia was still at the top of the game. And as such, many of them now look upon foreign digital technologies, because there are not so many domestic ones, as a way to resolve many of the contemporary problems, whether those problems have to do with the lack of funds for healthcare, for example, as is the case in the United Kingdom with the NHS system, education, broader kind of lack of entrepreneurship, and so forth. So in Europe, digital companies are not seen as some kind of a state-led project at rejuvenating the economy. Rather, they're seen as saviors to the state and to the economy. This is why you'll hear new leaders who present themselves as kind of breaking with the past, whether it's Emmanuel Macron in France or whether it's Matteo Renzi in Italy, going to Silicon Valley, taking on all of their kind of insignia, if you will. They're wearing 3D glasses, they're very enthusiastic about 3D printers and so forth, but ultimately they look upon Silicon Valley and digital technology as a way to more or less save them from their political and economic problems. It's a very different attitude that you see in America and China.
Like the German CEOs traveling to Silicon Valley and adapting to their culture.
Yeah, but I think it's not enough. Yeah, clearly here, the narrative that we hear is that it's just a cultural problem. So what lacks in Europe is this culture of kind of can-do entrepreneurship. So you just send your team to Palo Alto for 3 months and they come back and you have a Silicon Valley at home. Of course, the real story of success of Silicon Valley is far more complicated. It has to do with massive military funding going to a strategic defense of its interest at the trade level by American diplomats and so forth. It's not just a story of culture.